Hi there. So, we are talking about factoring. We have done some factoring of trinomials that started with just the variable squared, like if it was x squared plus something plus something. Now we're going to take it up a notch, hit the next difficulty level where we've got a number in front of the x squared. We're going to see how to factor something that starts with maybe 2x squared or 5x squared or something like that. And let me tell you, there's actually two methods that you could use for factoring something like this. And I'm going to show you both of them. In this section, we're going to focus on factoring kind of by trial and error, or just by figuring out what has to go where to make it all work out. And then in the next section, 6.4, I'm going to show you another method called the AC method, because it involves taking A times C. You'll see what that means later. But in that other section, in that other video, I'll show you that other kind of more systematic method that you can use for this kind of factoring. And then ultimately, it'll be up to you which one of those methods you want to use. Pick the one that seems easiest or most workable and do your factoring that way. Just find a method that works for you. I'm showing you both methods so you can decide which one you like best, and so that when I do examples by one or the other, you'll know what I'm doing. But when you actually do factoring yourself, whatever method works for you, that's great. So here we go with the first method, kind of trial and error. Now, before we talk about factoring, remember how multiplication works with the FOIL method. This is very important. You can't understand factoring without understanding multiplication, because factoring is just multiplication in reverse. It's figuring out what do I have to multiply to get this. So remember how it works if you multiply 2x plus 5 times x plus 3. So this is where you would be using the FOIL method. F-O-I-L, remember, first, outer, inner, last. So you'd multiply together the first terms, 2x times x, to get 2x squared. And you'd multiply together the outer terms, 2x times 3, to get 6x. And you'd multiply together the inner terms, 5 times x, to get 5x. And you'd multiply together the last terms of the two binomials. The last one of this times the last one of this, 5 times 3, to get 15. And then these two in the middle are both x terms. They're like terms, so we can combine them. The 6x and the 5x add up to 11x, so we get 2x squared plus 11x plus 15. So that's multiplying. Factoring would be the reverse of what we just did. Factoring would be if we started with 2x squared plus 11x plus 15 and had to figure out, okay, what goes here and here and here and here, so that when we multiply it all out with the FOIL method, when we do our F and O and I and L, this is what we end up with. Specifically, the F is going to give us our 2x squared. The L is going to give us our 15, and the O and the I together are going to add up to the 11x in the middle. So to get the 2x squared, we would have to have a 2x times an x. That's how we know what the first terms of the binomials have to be. And to get the 15, the numbers that go here and here have to be numbers that multiply to 15. Like a 5 and a 3, or could be a 15 and a 1. We don't know for sure until we check the outside and the inside and figure out how to get those to add up to 11x. So whatever number gets put on the outside gets multiplied by 2x. Whatever goes on the inside gets multiplied by 1x, and then those together have to add up to 11x. So as we've seen, the way to get that to happen is to put a 3 on the outside to get multiplied by the 2, and a 5 on the inside to get multiplied by the 1x. And that way we get our 2x squared plus 11x plus 15. I mentioned I was going to show you two methods. One method is kind of the trial and error approach, where we go directly from this to this, figuring out what the four things have to be. And then the AC method that I'm going to show you in a separate video is kind of going from this to this to this. It sort of shows you, okay, first, how do you get from something like this to something like this? And then once you get to this, you can factor this by grouping, by that grouping method that you can use when you have four terms like this. So let's work through some more examples by this sort of trial and error method. So to break 5x squared plus 8x plus 3 up into something times something, what do the somethings have to start with? What has to go here and here that multiplies together to give you 5x squared? Well, one of them has to have a 5x, and the other one just has to have an x. So 5 times x times another x, that's 5x squared. Now think about what could go here and here. These have to be numbers that multiply together to give you 3. That's going to be the L part of FOIL. Last terms multiply together give you 3. What numbers can you think of that multiply up to 3? Well, the only thing I can think of is 3 times 1. But we do have to worry about which one goes where. Do we put a 3 here and a 1 here? Or do we put a 1 here and a 3 here? It does matter, because the one that we put on the outside is going to get multiplied by 5x, and the one that we put on the inside is going to get multiplied by just 1x, and then those have to add up to 8x. So which way is going to work? Well, it turns out we want the 1 on the outside, the 3 on the inside, and then always, once you think you have it figured out, always check. Multiply it out with the FOIL method, and make sure the F and the O and the I and the L come out to give you whatever it is you started with. So 5x times x, 5x squared. Outside we get 5x. Inside we get 3x. Those do add up to 8x. And last we get 3 times 1 is 3. So that is the correct factoring. 5x plus 3 times x plus 1. Let's try another one. 7y squared minus 17, oh, that was supposed to be a y, sorry, plus 10. There, I fixed it. Okay, first, f. What has to go here and here so that when you multiply them together you get 7y squared? Well, that would be a 7y times a y. And what has to go here and here so that when you multiply it together you get 10? What numbers multiply together to give you 10? Well, it could be a 5 and a 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Another possibility would be 10 and a 1. 10 times 1 is 10. And you can have a positive times a positive, or a negative times a negative would also give you positive 10. So it might be a minus 5 and a minus 2, or a minus 10 and a minus 1. And because I want the outside and the inside to add up to minus 17y, they can't all be positive, they've got to be negative. So I went ahead and put in the minuses. It's got to be 7y minus something times y minus something. Now I have to figure out the somethings. I've got to either put a 10 in one of these slots and a 1 in the other, or a 5 in one and a 2 in the other. So let's try something and see if it works. Let's put a 1 here and a 10 here and check that. If I multiply everything out by the FOIL method, F-O-I-L, I get F, 7y squared, O, negative 70y, that doesn't look good, I, negative 1y, so together that would be negative 71y. Okay, that's not going to work. What if we switch these around? Have them trade places. Now if we FOIL this, we get 7y squared minus 7y minus 10y, and those add up to minus 17y. Yay, that worked! And then the minus 10 times the minus 1 is plus 10. So yeah, we got this one now. That is the correct factoring. How about this one? 2w squared minus w minus 6. What do these have to start with? What times what gives you 2w squared? Got to have a 2w times another w. Okay, what can go on the end? What times what gives you a minus 6? Well, to get a minus something, you'd have to multiply a positive times a negative, or a negative times a positive. But one of them has to be plus and one has to be minus. Okay? And then numerically, they have to multiply to 6. Could be a 2 and a 3, could be a 6 and a 1. But whatever we put here is going to get multiplied by 2w when we do the O part of FOIL. And whatever goes here is going to get multiplied by 1w when we do the I part of FOIL. So if you want to pause the video and think about it, try to figure out this puzzle for yourself. Figure out what actually does work. You can. And now I'm going to give you the answer. Put a plus 3 here and a minus 2 here. 2w plus 3 times w minus 2. The plus 3 times the minus 2 does give you the minus 6. And this way, outside we get minus 4w. Inside we get plus 3w. And if you combine those, they do add up to a negative 1w, or just a minus w. So that is the correct answer. Okay, so remember I said there's those two methods, and the second method, the AC method, I was going to show you in a separate video. That'll be section 6.4. There's one more thing we have to talk about in 6.3, and that is some special factoring patterns to look out for. So I will put that in a separate video, and I'll meet you there.